Hello, welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live. My name is Daniel Caw. Thanks for joining us in this late night edition. I'm joined, as always, by the one and only Keith Jackson. Keith, how are you?
Anybody that's joining this right now is a glutton for punishment, Dan.
It's fair to say it's not been a great night for Scottish football.
Well, I'm not saying that I find it depressing or dispiriting, but I just opened the patio doors there, heard the church bells ringing, a gust of wind and a tumbleweed just came firing in through my lounge floor. Honestly, man. I mean, I did say I tipped 3 draws, but I did say I was being really optimistic. I kind of feared the worst, but the reality was worse than even what I thought it might be. Rangers absolutely woeful. I caught up with Andy Newport after the final whistle in Budapest. We'll see that later. But they are such a bad side right now. They're in such a bad nick. For Celtic then to compound that with a really worryingly poor performance. I mean, look, let's get this right. 3-0 Roma, that could have been as many as Roma wanted it to be based on the first half performance. I'm sure, if you're looking for positives out of it, Celtic can say, well, they stemmed the bleeding, played a bit better, a bit more aggressive, a bit more front-footed second half. But really, let's be honest about it. We saw Roma do something really similar at Ibrox not that long ago. Get the game won, pack the tools away, and just coast to a win. And you always felt if they needed more, they'd score more.
Yeah.
So it's worrying in many regards, because what I said, Dan, was what Wilfred Nosey really needed tonight was to give the fans something, to, even if it was in defeat, to put something out on the pitch that made the fans, give them a reason to galvanise behind this, and to think that it wasn't a bad idea to move Martin O'Neill on. Celtic, the early evidence is are regressing from the side that Martin O'Neill left behind. And now it's, look, do you know what? It's been a horrible start. I think he's the first Celtic manager in the history of the club to lose his first 2 games. But if he goes to Hampden and walks away with the cup on Sunday, that'll go a long way to kind of stabilising things. But I just think St Mirren might have been watching that tonight, rubbing their hands, because Celtic are wide open. And I know Wilfred Nosey talks about formations not being that important, but this is his formation and it's not working.
See on that, Keith. And I've heard Ruben Amorim at Man United says that as well. Look, it's not about the formation is not important. See if it's not important. Why don't you go back to the back 4 then?
Why do you stick religiously to the formation that's not working? Yeah.
Almost the one they're comfortable with.
I've heard this stuff, right? And I kind of find it a bit of a deflection, Dan. So what Amorim's saying at Man United, probably similar. I don't know. Let's see, Wilfred Nosey. Who knows? He might change things. I don't think so. But coaches that become a bit intransigent like that, they're basically saying, well, it's not my fault. It's the players. And he might have a point there too. Amorim might have a point in Man United. The players aren't anywhere near good enough. I thought Celtic tonight clearly lacked quality. The worrying thing for me is they lack courage on the ball. They lack conviction. They lacked all the things that you're looking for. On a European night at Celtic Park, the very least you're looking for people to get in about it, to set a tempo, to play with an intensity, with a purpose. Celtic, everything they did went back the way tonight. They looked terrified. Now, I don't know if that's a disconnect, if they're struggling to understand what it is they're being asked to do, but they looked from the first minute tonight as if they were actually terrified of what was coming.
Yeah.
And the fans felt it, and Liam Scales is really unlucky with the own goal, but that's 5 minutes into the game, and I don't know if there was a single person inside Celtic Park at that point that thought it would turn out in any other way than the manner that it did, because the fans fell so flat. It was so unlike the place for a big night like that. So I think the big 2 in this country, Celtic, Rangers, they have got serious problems. Yeah. St Mirren, they'll be sitting there rubbing their hands at the prospect of Sunday. And again, this has been a great midweek for Derek McInnes without having to put his team out, without having to to play a game of football.
Aye.
Another 2 massive dunts to the teams that would normally be expected to be up there fighting this one out at the top end of the table. Great news for Hearts. Great news for them.
And I get that St Mirren are no Roma, obviously, but I couldn't agree more. I think St Mirren will be, and particularly Stephen Robinson will be licking his lips looking at that going, I know exactly how to play against that Celtic team.
Daniel, if you were to be honest, right, if there was 2 teams in this country set up to play against that Celtic formation, it's Hearts and St Mirren.
Yep.
So Wilfred Monsey, you know, you're as a manager, you always need to get a bit of luck as well, and even the fortune in terms of the fixtures isn't particularly great. But you know what? I keep saying it. The coin tosses, it flicks round to the other side if Celtic can come away from Hampden with a trophy on Sunday afternoon. That helps to change the whole mood music around it.
I'm delighted to say we're joined all the way from Celtic Park by the one and only Michael Gannon. Mick, how did you see tonight's game?
Hi. The first half was actually quite shocking how bad Celtic were. I mean, honestly, Roma were terrific. Quicker, bigger, stronger, more technical, really good. It's probably just as well that they're Italian, because they did the Italian thing of putting the feet up at half time and just cruised at the second half. I mean, it was very Italian, wasn't it, the second half?
They did the exact same thing at Ibrox a few weeks ago, Mick. They got the game won and then put the tools down.
I mean, it was quite funny. Sometimes they actually just kicking the ball with their face and as if they couldn't be bothered anymore. It was almost like, we've done our shift. We don't get paid any more for this nonsense. So it was, it meant that the second half wasn't as painful as the first. And there was some encouragement in the second half. I think Iheanacho coming back, looking quite lively, was a slight positive.
Yeah.
But the first half was alarm bells all over the shop. It's still a team that's failing to get to grips with the manager's vision. Disjointed, confused, wide open at times. I don't actually think there's a problem as such. Sorry, I'm getting shifted a wee bit here. Sorry. I don't think. I mean, people talk about this back threes and 3-5, 3-4-3s. Not. It was a back five, but the back five with Konecki and Yang as a fullbacks not going to work. I mean, Konecki had a poor night, but he had. I mean, his man had him on toast all evening that first half.
Yeah.
I mean, he was getting absolutely destroyed. Was it? What do you call it? Sully had him destroyed.
Yeah,
I mean, it was painful for him. Not a fullback. Yang on the other side, not a fullback, and they get pegged back in. First half an hour, they couldn't got the halfway line, Celtic. So it wasn't. It was a back five. The midfield box. I mean, it was Hatate sitting deeper. Hatate is wasteful at best times, but he away with it when he's playing number 10, and you've got 70 yards to cover it up. Not when you're losing the ball 35 yards for your own goal. You can't get out.
But Mick, that's a worry. That's a worry for me, because Martin O'Neill identified that and made sure that he played to Hatate another 30, 40. He
played him off the front in a kind of 4-4-1-1. Listen, O'Neill was trying to make do with what he's got. I think Nonsi is trying to imprint his style, but he needs to realise he's not got the players to play this way yet. I said that on our Celtic podcast. Celtic don't have the players to play any formation right now. Martin O'Neill was playing a 4-4-1-1 with no winger, so there is no formation that Celtic can play right now. But it's just a bit bewildering when Celtic had no right backs in the first half and then they had 2 on in the second half. But I couldn't really figure that out either. It's a team that's not quite, just has not got to grips yet with the new way of playing. That is going to take time, and you can't get to be a work in progress against teams like Roma.
No,
they'll brutally expose it.
I thought the second goal, Mick, was a perfect example of that, where you've got Konecki meant to be playing and giving cover to Kieran Tierney. Kieran Tierney finds himself 2v1 in the wide area. He's not got a chance. He's not got a chance in that position. And Konecki's 20 yards further forward than he should be, and that's a worry for me, that I'm not sure the players understand what it is they're being asked to do here, because surely that's not what the manager wants.
Well, I just think, I think the guy needs to have time to do his own thing, but you don't get time in the middle of December. I think sometimes you have to look at what you've got and then reverse engineer it from that. You don't say, I want to play 4-4, 4-4-3, and then make it fit. You have to take what you've got and reverse engineer it to make it work, and that's not happening right now.
Which is exactly what Martin O'Neill did, Mick. He looked at what he had available to him, and he put out a system that he felt would make Celtic best able to win games of football.
What he did was he tried to limit the amount of square pegs and round holes. To one or two, and then whereas at the moment it now looks like 5 or 6 round pegs and square holes, or vice versa. So that's something that I think that it might take a step back to kind of think, wait a minute, I don't have the personnel to play this way just now. As I said, I don't have the personnel to play any kind of way just now. Just need to get by. I think any actual coming back is a boost, because I think you could get away with Dyson Maeda playing that wing back role rather than Tunetke, and that might make it a bit more workable. But the Yang as a right back's not going to work. It isn't going to work. Yang as a right back. He's just not that kind of player. He's not as dynamic enough to play that kind of role. Problems all over the pitch for Celtic tonight. A lot for Nancy to think about in the next few days. St Mirren and Sunday is looking increasingly ominous by the day. If ever there's a team who are pragmatic, who will hone in on any weaknesses and exploit them. Another thing I've noticed for a long time with Celtic, but especially tonight, was the difference in size between Roma and Celtic. It looked like wee boys playing against men. Roma, every set piece, it was like they're muscled and outmatched for size. Every single position, every man was taller than another one. I mean, Celtic have got Scales and Trusty are the two centre halves. I wouldn't say Scales is a massive in terms of height. Engels is about 6 foot and Nigel's about 6 foot. After that, Celtic are tiny and they're not very strong. I mean, that's a team that badly needs some height, some muscle, a bit of physicality. They don't have it. They get brushed up. The first half they're getting brushed aside.
And that's exactly the challenge they're going to face against St Mirren. Okay, we're not saying St Mirren are in Roma's category in terms of calibre, but physicality, they're a big side. That's
right in the Buddies' wheelhouse, isn't it? That is. I mean, set plays, and again, second set corner kick in a row. They've conceded again. This one, it was Scales. What header that was in top corner. But it's because he's under pressure against big brutes in that box. So that's something that has to be addressed in January. Listen, this shopping list for January is like a phone book. I mean, literally, Celtic are lacking so much all over the pitch right now. And I think maybe the manager had a great idea to take a step back and look at what he's got rather than what he wants to do, because what he's got can't do what he wants to do right now. And listen, this result could have easily happened under Martin O'Neill. It did in Midtjylland, exactly the same, by the way. First half of Midtjylland was exactly the same as first half here. Out-muscled, outgunned, outpowered, outplayed. Exactly the same as it was in Denmark against Roma. So it's happened in the recent past. To see it, so you can't pin it all on the manager, because it's happened 3 weeks ago. 4 weeks ago. There's a glaring lack of quality, Mick, and you've been talking about that for a while, and you're right. We say this is just July. This is a team that is badly lacking all over the pitch. They're riddled with injuries, which is killing them as well. But even before the injuries, they're lacking severely all over the pitch. So this could have happened again. Like Sunday could have happened under Martin O'Neill. It wouldn't have surprised me, because it's been coming for a while, because they've been flying by the seat of their pants for weeks, Celtic. And it's just glaringly obvious. But what I'm saying is, I think the manager might have to think, right, it has to strip us back to basics. This is a poor Celtic squad, and it has to be a case of just getting by. And the games are coming thick and fast. Tough games coming thick and fast. I mean, they can forget about Europe now till the end of January, which is probably a good thing. But they've got domestic games that are coming thick and fast that are really tough, and they're going to test Celtic, because the things that they were getting by because they looked a bit more solid without having the quality. Whereas now they've lost that kind of solidity, and they look a bit vulnerable and a bit kind of feeble and a wee bit wide open. So they'll need to step that back and get back to basics.
We've got so many comments coming in. I know you've got post-match duties, Mick, and we can let you go in a wee minute if that's okay. I want to get your take on this, though, because I'm actually a bit shocked. I know we should never be shocked by Scottish football fans, but so many fans are actually calling for Wilfred Nancy to be sacked already. Paul Martin says, don't worry what anybody says. If we get beaten Sunday, he should be sacked. Thomas Burns, this manager has to go. He's out of his depth. Sean says, the Celtic team is so imbalanced that will struggle with any formation against Roma. Craigie says, Nancy's a must-win for Sunday. If he loses, it's the end for me. I mean, look, I'm not for a second thinking that should be the case, Mick, but this game on Sunday is hugely critical for him now.
Listen, as they can't, it's defeat on Sunday's unthinkable. They went under immense pressure right from the kickoff. It's a long way back from that point. So he has to get through Sunday. But confident his head after tonight. I mean, this Roma team listen, Celtic have been humped in Europe by plenty of teams in the last 15, 20 years. Since Martin O'Neill's last time in charge, right? We've seen this kind of thing before. I've seen it 4 weeks ago in Denmark, pretty similar. So this is not a new situation for Celtic to be in. But I think calling for the Manchester head is ridiculous. It's going to take them time. Listen, Celtic managers in the past have got off to bad starts. We've gone striking, get thumped 5-0 in by our media, then drew 4 each at Motherwell. People wanted him sacked after 2 games, 3 titles later. I mean, Wim Jansen lost his first 2 league games. People were headlines about the worst thing that hit Japan since Hiroshima and all that. Wins the title. There is bad starts. Brendan Rodgers lost 1-0 Lincoln Red Imps. Back page of the Daily Mirror in England was embarrassing. We get slaughtered. So it's not been a great start, but you've got to give a guy a chance. He's got a really poor hand to deal with to play with right now. He needs to kind of try and get to January with limited damage, with a trophy on the sideboard, and then has to be backed properly. It's over to the Celtic board. What I think that I noticed tonight was that Celtic fans have gone beyond the angry stage now. I think the apathy stage is kicking in. The atmosphere tonight, flat as a pancake. Even the anti-board stuff was flat as a pancake.
Yeah.
It was the end, even the booing was like kind of half-hearted at the end. We're now into the kind of apathetic stages, and that's a dangerous situation to be in for any club.
Mate, I think that the key part for this, for me, is that Wilfred Nosey used the word in his press conference yesterday about pragmatism. And I think you're absolutely right, Mick. I think that he'll need to let pragmatism get the better of him here. And he might have his set ideas and his philosophies, but he needs to, a good manager assesses what he's got and then shapes his team up in order to make them, as competitive as they can be and as capable of winning games. I think you're right, but I worry that when you get, coaches that come in and they've got these philosophies and they've got these very set ideas and it's carved into stone, I think that's the big question. Can he allow pragmatism to get the better of principle here and set Celtic up properly? Because in the meantime, this is sort of band-aid treatment, as you said, to get to January. Will he do it? That's the question. Yeah,
he's not here. He can't be here to build for the next 4 weeks. He's firefighting for 4 weeks and then hope that the cavalry's coming over the hill. And so at that point, it's over to the club and the recruitment department. But he has to recognise that the kind of 7 or 8 wins under Martin O'Neill was a big achievement in the circumstances, probably an even more impressive achievement in the circumstances, but it was camouflage. It was camouflage for what's been happening all season. And there were signs that the camouflage was starting to kind of peel off at times, even under Martin O'Neill as well. So I don't think we can take that period and say that was all sunshine and roses during that period. I think they got away with it a few times. And Martin O'Neill knew this, by the way. He knew that there was trouble coming down the pipeline with this squad, privately and publicly. And we're still seeing it. And I think Mossy's got to recognise that as well and fight the fire until he gets help.
Mick, as I say, I know you've got some post-match duties to be getting on with, so we can let you go. But thanks, as ever, for coming on the Hotline Live.
No worries, chat. Catch you later on. Mate, back to
Cheers,
See you later.
Thanks, Mick. Michael Gannon there, Keith. And look, I put that question to him about people actually come for his head, because I'm actually taken aback by the amount of people in the comments that are saying this, the amount of Celtic fans. Although I would counter it with Sean, and I probably agree with Sean, if you're a Celtic fan calling for the manager, you're an absolute embarrassment. I would agree with that. It's 2 games. It's not been great. They're 5-1 down in aggregate over the 2 games. But come on, the guy has had 180 minutes.
But Dan, it's not about I told you so. But people were making the point and being critical when I was making the point that Martin O'Neill's success in that short period raised the bar to such a level that it actually piled pressure on Wilfred, and that's what you're seeing here.
No.
What you're seeing is, if Martin O'Neill had been stumbling around and there was a bad result here and a poor performance, there was a couple of patchy performances, but you're talking about a man whose initial and only purpose was to get 3 points, win the games of football, find a way to win. That's the crucial aspect. And it's, you sacrifice principles, you just find a way of putting a team on the park and give it the best chance of winning a game of football. That's what Martin O'Neill did, and it was going back to basics. And my concern was, by bringing in a coach who is highly principled in the way that he wants to go about it, don't sacrifice a winning side for your principles. You can't do that. That's the wrong way around. And my concern for Wilfred Nancy from the start was, because Martin O'Neill was so successful in taking a limited group of Celtic players but turning them into consistent winners, that would pile another layer of pressure onto Wilfred Nancy. And I think that's what you're seeing. I think that's what that reaction's all about. If Martin O'Neill had won a couple, lost a couple, drawn a couple, you don't get that reaction tonight.
Yeah.
It's because Celtic fans saw their season getting rescued and pieced back together, and now they're looking at it thinking, this whole thing's falling apart.
And just on that, before we move on to Rangers, one last very quick visit to the comments, because there's so many of them, Keith, I feel like I should try and get through. Mark agrees with you, says Martin O'Neill covered up the cracks. He significantly added pressure on Nancy even before the Hearts game. James Gilmore simply says, get him out. Joe Bogie says, these Celtic players can be labelled not good enough, but they were more than good enough to comfortably beat Feyenoord in style 2 weeks ago. So what's changed? And Derek echoes that as well. He says, this is a winning team under Martin O'Neill, and now we've lost 2 games back-to-back at home. See, just to go back to what you were saying a minute ago, Keith, do you think Wilfred Nancy would think to himself, listen, I might be seen as weak if I change my philosophy, my principles now, my formation? Personally, I would see it as a manager reacting to his surroundings and adapting to winning.
He used the word himself. He volunteered it. He wasn't asked about it. He volunteered the word pragmatism and said that he was prepared to be pragmatic. Well, this is an acid test for him, because I think Celtic, the players that they've got there, look a lot better suited to playing 4 at the back and keeping it a little bit more simple. The gaps that are there to be exploited in this 3 at the back system, with the wingers pushing up into fullbacks, I think St Mirren are rubbing their hands at that, and I tell you for why, because I've seen it all season with them, and over the course of how many seasons now with Stephen Robinson. Long diagonals, big tall guys playing up against fullbacks or centre halves, winning the first headers, playing for scraps around and on that big pitch at Hampden, I think he needs to change back to a back 4 for that game. That depends about, as when he says that he's prepared to be pragmatic, does he mean it, or is he going to stick rigidly to his principles? Because I think Celtic's best chance of coping with the game that I expect St Mirren to try and bring to them at the weekend would be to return to a back 4.
Aye. Well, I mean, look, before we move on to Rangers, Keith, what is your gut feeling for the weekend? Do you think, A, Celtic will have enough to get over the line against St Mirren, and B, do you think Nancy will? I'm trying to think of another word rather than, fold. I don't mean that. Will he change to a back 4?
Who knows? Because we don't know enough about him. Or what we do know is, however, that before he picked his first team sheet, we all knew there was a high chance of him going to this back 3 and making those changes. That's because if you base everything upon the success that he had in the MLS, it was this back 3. He'd made it pretty clear that's the way he sees his teams playing, to such an extent that he was prepared to come in and totally rip up the kind of blueprint that Martin O'Neill had laid down for him. So do I think it's probable that he'll change? No, I think the probability would tell you he'll stick. He'll go with, he'll stick to his principles. He'll go with inviting problems on himself for that.
I completely agree, aye. Look, we're 25 minutes in. We could talk about Celtic Roma the whole night with the amount of comments we've got in, and we really appreciate it. But we should probably talk about Rangers, Keith. You caught up with Record Sports' Andy Newport after the 2-1 defeat against Ferencvaros. Shall we hear a little bit of what he had to say?
Well, you can imagine that Andy wouldn't be particularly pleased.
Let's hear how he took that result.
And as you can see, I'm joined by Andy Newport from the Bulls at the Ferencvaros Stadium in Budapest. Andy, a real damp squib performance yet again from this Rangers side. They really have gone out of this competition with an absolute whimper.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a team that's qualified for the knockout stages 5 times the last 6 years, but, they've declined so rapidly, so sharply this season. And it's not a great surprise to see them go out tonight. You know, the mistakes that have been costing them all year, you know, reared their ugly head again. The 2 goals they conceded are, you know, really, really poor to say the least. I mean,
it's club football, mate. It's not European
football. I mean, obviously the first one, Jaden McComa, to put it out for a corner, doesn't. Ball comes back out. Fenerbahce work it into the box. Ferencvaros work it into the box. Gisama, I'm not sure what he's doing, but completely loses his runner. Ball goes in. Takes a nick off of obviously big Nasser Giga, and they went to the goal. And you know, it's at the worst possible time that we concede after obviously getting themselves ahead with the goal from Bojan Majowski, last kick of the first half. You really thought they'd come out again with a wee bit of gusto in the second half and try to get themselves. They had to win tonight. They knew they had to win tonight if they would have any chance of, you know, keeping their hopes of qualifying alive. But they didn't really. They allowed Ferencvaros to get a foothold in the game again. And you know, again, second goal is so poor. Manny Fernandez has no idea that the boys behind him and turns around to see him head the ball into the net. So yeah, I mean, I think it's really deflating. Yeah, just a really deflating night for the Rangers fans who came over here.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose Danny Rowe will try and look for some positives in there. I'm not sure where you would find them. I think Raskin played well. Thought he was a standout actually for Rangers. Connor Barron assisted him ably enough in midfield. Magoma did okay. If you were really stretching it, you'd say Danilo had an okay first half. And we'll obviously take the fact that Miosi's got himself a goal, but they're such a poor lot, Andy. They are such a poor Rangers side. And
the trouble is that the only way out of this, clearly, I mean, I'm seeing Danny Rowe getting a bit of stick from some fans, and you know, they're running out of patience. Maybe not with him, but just with the situation in general. But there's no way out of this without another overhaul of the squad. But I think some fans are getting their hopes up for January. There's going to be, you know, 5, 6, 7 players coming. That's just not going to happen. You're maybe going to get 3, maybe 4 at the most, but even that seems bolding. To try and get guys in that are of the quality come straight into this starting 11, they're not easy to find in this January window. So, you know, the ominous thing for the Rangers support will be that what they're seeing now is going to carry on in the second half of the season, and you know, you'll still get 20 odd games left of the campaign. You know, that is not good reading for the Rangers fans when they see that.
Well, look, I mean, you just look at the stats for this campaign. Played 6, lost 5, drawn 1. What is it? Goal scored 3, conceded 11, -8 goal difference. I mean, it's actually, I was going to say borderline embarrassing. It's beyond borderline. It's just embarrassing.
I mean, put it this way, I mean, Ferencvaros should have probably had 2 or 3 goals more before they equalised. You know, that's Algiga. Yeah. And I think that is the real frustration for the Rangers sport. You look at the teams that have beat them comfortably at times this season. You're talking about Bergen, you're talking about Genk at home. You know, these aren't great world beaters. These are bang average teams. These are kind of teams that Rangers for the last 5, 6 years would have been sweeping aside with ease. They've been made to look really, really poor against them. And again, it just all comes back to that summer recruitment. I mean, and the worrying thing I think for Rangers now is what damage this, the long-term damage of this, how long it's going to take them to unpick the recruitment mistakes, and also the damage it's done to the coefficient. You know, you're already talking about Scotland losing second Champions League places. You're talking about teams having to maybe play 3 and 4 qualifiers just to reach group stages. This could have after effects that sort of linger on for a number of years to come. Yeah.
Listen, we're talking about kind of Danny Rowe there, and the fans starting to lose a bit of patience with him. He probably gets a free pass because it's Russell Martin's and Kevin Thelwell's squad. Probably gets a free pass from a lot of people, but there is also an onus on him to make improvements and to make Rangers more competitive. Where do you think the general consensus is with Danny Rowe at the moment?
Listen, I think you can look at the league form and go, well, you know, that's a guy that inherited a team that had won 1 game out of 7, I think. You know, now he's won, I think it's 5 out of 7 himself. So clearly there's been progress made. Of course there has. But it's very small. And is it enough to satisfy the more reactionary elements of the fans who are had their patience, worn thin because of repeated failures that this club has got put them through. Maybe not. Maybe it's not enough. They want to see this team winning today, but that's just not how it's going to work. It's going to take time. It's going to take a number of transfer windows before this team is anywhere near back to being properly competitive again. Listen, there's an argument made that Rangers were out of this competition even before tonight. It was such a long shot for them to get through. The bigger picture is Monday night against Hibs, and I think we saw that with Danny Rose' team selection, leaving Mikey Moore out. I think if he really felt that they could have got a result here tonight and completed this sort of continental comeback, I think you might have seen him getting a start. But the fact that it was always such a long shot, him just coming back from injury, he was never going to throw him in. But I think the league campaign, can it still be salvaged? Probably not in terms of winning titles, but they've still got things like second place. They have to get themselves into second place, just to, as you say, give them the best possible shot of qualifying for group stages next season. So there's still a lot of work to be done. Still big games to play, and Monday night is obviously one of them.
Yeah, I think Danny Rowe might come under pressure after the window. If whatever work is done in the transfer window doesn't make Rangers significantly better, I think whether it's fair or whether it's not, I think he starts to go under the microscope at that point.
I'll just say that, Keith, that just the fact is that it's still Danny Rowe. Okay, he's going to be the guy, signing these guys, but it won't be him going out and doing all the recruitment work. You've still got an infrastructure at the club that's led by Dan Hurdy and Nathan Fisher that were there before him, brought in by obviously Russell Martin and Kevin Fairwell. So he's still having to deal with the after effects of that. Are they necessarily going to go and find all the types of players that Danny Rowe would ideally want? I'm sceptical about that one.
I tell you what, though, one of the players that was brought in, and it's probably one of the few that have been getting pass marks in the earliest part of the season, Gassama. And I thought he was terrible again tonight. I think he's been an absolute fizzy drink over the last wee while. Flatters to deceive, and I thought his body language was terrible. There was one pass from Connor Barron who was running his nuts off all over the middle of the park tonight. Played one ball half a yard behind him, and Gassama's got the arms out and all that. That's not what Rangers need right now. They need players that will be in the trenches for one another.
I've just written that in my match report. Also, there's some rumours today that Villarreal are perhaps considering an offer from. I think you'll find a lot of Rangers fans would happily drive him to the airport right now. Obviously, he came in at the start of the season, started like a house on fire, scoring goals left, right and centre. But since then, when the goals have dried up, so's his work rate. I don't think he works nearly hard enough. I think he's a bit of a prima donna. I think he's got a tendency to dive if he doesn't get the decision he wants.
Yeah.
And for me, I think it's a key thing because as much as Danny Rowe, having worked with him at Sheffield Wednesday, will know his strengths, he'll also know where he's lacking. And perhaps that might just be the thing that thinks, listen, if we can turn around, I think it was a couple of £1 million they spent getting from Sheffield Wednesday this summer. Yeah. So if they can turn that into a profit, and again find somebody that is more to Danny Rowe's liking, then perhaps it's an easy one for them to make. So interesting to see how that one plans out.
One person they won't be turning a profit on anytime soon is Youssef Chermiti. Come off the bench again tonight. Didn't look interested to me, Andy, I'll be honest with you.
I don't know what else you can say about this lad. Probably just one of the worst pieces of business any club has ever done. £8 million in a guy who shows next to nothing. I think the people at Rangers behind the scenes, the American owners, have been taken a bit aback by the level of expectancy in him. I think they thought he was somebody coming into, he was a project, if you want to put it this way. But they have failed to realise that the Rangers fans will expect, if you pay £8 million for a guy, they expect him to be the absolute bee's knees. They expect him to do the business, and he's a million miles away from doing that. It really is hard to see how Rangers will get anywhere near getting that £8 million back, never mind turning a profit on it as the club is hoping for.
Andy Newport there in Budapest. See, before we go on, Keith, we've got plenty of comments on Rangers. Before I get to them, I'm really surprised to hear both your take on Gassama. I don't watch Rangers, every week with work and what have you. But last I checked, it feels like he was the one Rangers player that was a bright spot.
He had a good 3 weeks or something at the start of the season, Daniel. I think he's offered very little creativity. Yeah, I guess he's the one guy that you might look to from a Rangers perspective that can run at people and maybe make things happen in the final third. But there's very little. There's very little end product, and I think his body language is poor. I just think I looked at some of the Celtic players tonight. I thought Nygren was really poor.
He had a terrible night.
Yeah, but see when you see these guys, and you know that it's a difficult game, but the kind of arms are coming up, the shoulders are getting raised. That's a worry. That's an alarm for me. An alarm bell sounds, because at the very least, when you're up against a team of superior quality, and let's get this right, Rangers were up against far more limited opposition than Celtic were tonight. But either way, in a game that matters, in a game that you have to win, in a game that you're up against it, you actually need people that are pulling together. And Gassama, it almost looks to me at times as if he thinks he's a little bit better than everybody else, and doesn't need to put in the same sort of work ethic. I think he's been a massive disappointment, to be honest. I think that, as I said, a bit of a fizzy drink. Lots of bubbles for the first wee while. Then when it goes flat, there's not much there. It's not an enjoyable. It's not an enjoyable process, and I think that I think Rangers will get problems in that. If he is their go-to man in the final third, they're not going to go anywhere, because he seems to me to lack the necessary heart and desire to be a difference maker. He's got talent, there's no doubt about it, but where's the heart? And this is, as we've said many times before about both Celtic and Rangers, it's not good enough being a talented kid. It's not good enough being, having quality and, technical ability. You need to have that extra ingredient if you're going to make it in this environment. And right now I look at Celtic and I look at Rangers, and I just don't see it. I don't see players that are cut out to wear the jersey. Funnily enough, Ryan Stevenson got a hard time. That's one of the things he said about Celtic at the weekend. Wilfred Nancy's biggest problem is there aren't enough players in there that when the going's going to get tough, that they're going to be the guys that change it, that grab a game by the scruff of the neck. Rangers don't have very many. Raskin got pass marks tonight, maybe among the only ones. There was a couple of okay performances. Celtic, wow, just miles off it all over the pitch. And guys that look frightened now of what they're taking on. You can't be frightened. You can't pull on a green and white shirt or a blue shirt, those badges, playing in front of those supporters, and be afraid of what it is that you've been asked to do. And right now I see two sides that are terrified of their responsibilities. And as I said, St Mirren rubbing their hands, and most of all, Derek McInnes.
One last very quick visit to the comments, Keith, because we've got a lot on Rangers that I've not had a chance to go through. Our pal Gianni says, going by the evidence, neither of the old firm will make the right transfers. 1 in 5 turn out to be decent. At least the majority are rancid. Green Machine says, if Raul gets a free pass, the same for Nancy. It's not his squad.
I agree with that. I agree with that. But I do come back to the fact, and this is not with the benefit of hindsight or retrospect, Daniel. I've said consistently, Danny Rowe, his CV doesn't constitute getting involved in even a discussion about becoming the manager of Rangers. Yeah. Wilfred Nancy has got the same issue. So these guys, in order to actually win people over, they actually really need to go off to a quick start and show signs right from day one that, this is an exciting appointment. It's thinking outside the box. It's going to benefit the club in the longer term. Right now, it's two really inexperienced guys in two really difficult positions with two pretty threadbare squads. So that doesn't fill you with confidence. I think what I said the other night, you look at what Martin O'Neill did, 73-year-old man, comes in, identifies where Celtic are going wrong, makes changes, makes it simplistic, the benefit of experience. You saw what the benefit of experience brought to Celtic. Derek McInnes, the best manager in Scotland so far this season. We know that because his side's sitting top of the league. Benefit of experience. Steve Clarke, he's got Scotland to a World Cup. Benefit of experience. So I think somewhere along the line in this rush to reinvent the wheel, people are taking risks and maybe they're unnecessary. But that remains to be seen. Danny Rowe does deserve to try and change things around for Rangers in the January transfer window. Good luck with that, Danny. And Wilfred Nancy, exactly the same, if not more so. In fact, definitely more so. He's only just in the door. It's only 2 games. But mistakes have been made in these 2 games that I think are quite alarming.
Yeah. Very quickly, Brian Urquhart says Roll needs 2 transfer windows. Patience, he will have this team winning something. I'm sure of it. Nancy, I have a feeling will go down in history as Celtic's worst ever manager. Although Scott says the performances are no better than under Russell Martin. And do you remember Alistair Ramage that would come on every night with these Tavernier campaign? Hopefully we'll never see Tavernier again. You've got to admire his tenacity. I do like that. I mean, no offence to Tavernier, but it's quite funny.
Tavernier's got to shut that cross down for the Ferencvaros winner. Absolutely. Yep. But if you're going to apportion blame at that goal, yes, Tavernier should do better. Manny Fernandez, that is, I'm sorry, that's Sunday League stuff.
Yeah.
That's impossible. A centre-half cannot get himself in that mess. His body shape's all wrong. He's facing the wrong way. He's got to anticipate the cross coming in. He's got to anticipate that, and he's got to move towards it and be aggressive and defend it. I don't know what he was doing. It was like he was going for a country dance or something. I've no idea what he was doing.
Right, I think, Keith, that we could talk about this all night. Both games and the comments coming in are endless, and we massively appreciate it. Thanks for getting involved in the conversation. But I think that more or less brings us to the end of our late night Hotline Live.
Well, there is Aberdeen as well, Daniel. You're very central, aren't you?
You're right. My apologies. Aberdeen, they did lose though, but weirdly, they were the highlight of Scottish football tonight.
Probably out of the 3, Aberdeen have done more to, less to damage their credibility on the European stage than the other 2. And
it's a serious team, that Strasbourg team. They're a good team.
Listen, they've been absolutely superb in this Conference League. Liam Rossignol doing a terrific job, some really good players. Aberdeen had the odds really stacked up against them for that game, and by all accounts played a really strong first half, first 20 minutes. I think they've had a goal chalked off. I think it's a VAR job. I think it's handball when they thought they'd taken the lead. And, Aberdeen have at least, they've kind of stood their ground a little bit over these last few games in the Conference League. It's not been great by any stretch of the imagination. But compared to the mess that Rangers and Celtic are making of it, it's, Aberdeen have probably carried the flag a little bit better than Celtic and Rangers. Now, I accept the fact that Martin O'Neill got a brilliant result and performance against Feyenoord away, which, by the way, keeps Celtic in the hunt here. Yeah. That's a sore one tonight. Difficult games to come, but they've still got a chance. Rangers are gone. They're done already.
Yeah.
It's just it is depressing. It's been a really depressing European campaign for Scottish clubs once again.
I mean, that's quite a dour note to end on, but
hey, there's always a World Cup.
Exactly. I mean, Ewan in the comments to sum up says, all teams are mints, not watching any football to the summer. Look, come back, Ewan, it'll get better. Don't worry, I don't know who you support, it'll get better though.
Well, the one thing, is as bad as it's been, and, as I said, Celtic are still in there fighting in terms of getting qualification. Rangers are out, Aberdeen are finished. But there is so much drama still to come domestically. It's not been great. This is as poor as I can remember Celtic and Rangers in the one season. But that adds a massive dollop of drama into the whole thing because of what Hearts are doing. Who knows what this cup final is going to look like on Sunday with St Mirren. Listen, it might not be great in terms of quality, but the drama and the storylines, they're always there in Scottish football.
Absolutely. The next instalment of drama, as you say, Keith, will be on Sunday, the Premier Sports Cup final, and we'll be back then to talk about it all from 6 p.m. on Sunday. Keith, it's always a pleasure.
Cheers, Dan.
Thank you very much for watching at home, and hope you can join us on Sunday. Cheers.